3 weeks after Elena returned, the apartment felt different, not because anything had changed physically, but because they moved through it like two people learning to live together for the first time. Kareem made tea in the mornings and left it on the kitchen counter without waiting for her. Elena organized the books he'd left scattered on the coffee table, not to change him, but to understand him. They existed in careful proximity, neither fully close nor entirely distant. A marriage built on rebuilt trust looked nothing like a marriage built on the beginning of love. One evening, while Kareem was at work, Elena found a leather journal on his nightstand. It wasn't hidden yet, was simply there, waiting. She recognized the deliberateness of its placement the moment she saw it. He'd left it for her. She knew this because men don't leave journals accidentally. Men especially don't leave journals when they contain truths they're afraid to speak aloud. The handwriting inside was his, precise and careful. She could have recognized it anywhere now. She'd watched him sign documents, write notes, leave her messages. His handwriting had become as familiar as her own. The first entry was dated 3 years ago. Today I saw her, not for the first time, but the first time I allowed myself to see her completely. She doesn't know me. She doesn't know I've noticed her. But there's something in the way she moves through the world, observant, gentle with small things that made me want to know her. Elena's breath caught. She sat on the edge of their bed, the same bed where they slept now, and read on. Entry after entry documented a man watching a woman he didn't know, trying to understand her the only way he knew how. Through observation, through careful attention, through the cataloging of small details. She organized her desk by color today, not by importance or urgency. By color, like the world's chaos could be arranged into something beautiful through sheer will and aesthetic sense. I thought about that for hours. She skipped lunch. Again. Unnoticed because she looked tired, like her body was catching up with her mind. I wanted to tell her that eating matters, but I don't know her. Not yet. She walks every Thursday evening. Always the same route. Same time. I've started taking the same route. Just to see her. Just to be in the same space. Even if she doesn't know I'm there. Elena closed her eyes. A man had been watching her. Not menacingly, she could feel the gentleness in every observation. But he'd been watching. He'd been building a map of her existence before he'd ever spoken to her. She didn't know whether to feel violated or cherished. Perhaps they were the same thing. Perhaps a man watching you meant he was paying attention in a way the world usually didn't. She continued reading. The entries shifted around the middle of the journal. The handwriting stayed the same, but something in the words changed. The observations became less about cataloging and more about confessing. I arranged the meeting. I told myself it was to introduce myself, but I orchestrated it. The timing, the place, the way I coincidentally was there. I've spent so much time watching her that I could predict her movements down to the minute. But when I saw her face real, unguarded, surprised, I realized something terrifying. I wanted her to choose me without knowing what she was choosing. I wanted her to love me before I gave her the choice to leave. The words blurred as she read them. A man had engineered their meeting. Every moment she'd thought was accident had been architecture. The coffee shop visits, the Thursday walks, the careful way he'd inserted himself into her life, all of it had been designed. But there was something else in the journal entries. Something that made her keep reading instead of closing the book and never opening it again. Entry 120. I destroyed the investigator reports today. Not because I'm good, but because I love her more than I love knowing what she'll do. I love her more than I love control. And that means I have to let her become unpredictable. It means I have to let her choose without knowing all the information I have. It means I have to become someone she could choose, not someone she was engineered to choose. The last 6 months were real. Not the meeting that was architecture, but the love was real. The way I remember her. The way I wait for her. The way my heart moves when she laughs. That wasn't planned. That wasn't orchestrated. That was just me. Finally, becoming someone capable of genuine love instead of careful control. Elena sat with the journal in her lap as the sun set outside their window. She didn't feel betrayed, so felt sin. A man had watched her so carefully, had paid such meticulous attention to every detail of her existence, that he'd fallen in love with the actual her, not the idea of her, but the real, imperfect, color-organizing, meal-skipping woman that she was. She understood now why he'd hidden his wealth. It wasn't just about money. It was about the same thing that made him watch her for 6 months before introducing himself. He was terrified that people would love him for the wrong reasons. He was so afraid of being chosen for his power that he decided to find someone who didn't know he had any. Kareem came home that evening to find Elena on their couch, the journal open beside her. He stopped in the doorway, reading her face, trying to understand what she'd decided. She didn't speak. She simply reached out her hand. He sat beside her slowly, leaving space between them until she closed that space herself. She rested her head against his shoulder, and he didn't move, didn't push, didn't try to explain or defend. He simply existed in her presence, in the aftermath of being fully known. She needed to ask. The question had been sitting in her chest since the moment she'd opened the journal, demanding to be released. When she finally spoke, her voice came quiet, barely above a whisper. The words hung between them, not as an accusation, but as a confirmation of something she'd already known. He didn't deny it. He simply nodded, accepting the truth without defensiveness. The answer was already written in the journal she held. The answer was in every entry she'd read. She pushed further, needing to hear him say it plainly. Before they'd met, before the coffee shop, before the careful way he'd appeared in her life like something natural and unplanned, he confirmed it. Yes. A single word that contained the entire confession. 6 months of watching, 6 months of learning her before she knew him. She sat with that truth, letting it settle into the space between them. Her hand remained in his, and he didn't pull away. He waited for her to ask the question that mattered most, the one that would determine everything that came after. She was quiet for a long time, sitting with him in the gathering dusk. When she finally spoke, she asked the question that mattered most. Why? He took his time answering. She could feel him gathering words, trying to arrange them into something that explained loneliness in a way loneliness could actually be explained. The answer, when it came, was raw with honesty. He told her about the weight of money, about how it distorted everything it touched, about years of being loved for the wrong reasons, for what he could buy, for the doors he could open, for the world he could give someone, about the terror of never knowing if anyone would choose him if the choice came without wealth attached. He spoke of watching her, not to hurt her, but to understand her. He'd studied every small detail of her existence because he was trying to find someone whose love might mean something real. He'd wanted to know her before he met her, to understand if she was someone who could see past the money, past the power, past everything that made other people's eyes change. He'd been trying to know if she could love him, despite everything. Elena lifted her head to look at him properly. His face was open in a way she'd never seen before, all the careful composure gone, leaving only the man underneath. She understood what he was saying, and something in her wanted to correct him. He'd been studying her worthiness, deciding if she was good enough for him, for his money, for his carefully constructed life, but his next words stopped her before she could speak. He wasn't studying her at all, not in the way she'd thought. He was studying himself. He was trying to figure out if he was worthy of her, if he was the kind of man who could love her without trying to control her, without trying to remake her into the version of herself he thought was beautiful. He was asking himself if he could learn to love her freely. There's a difference, he said, a profound one. She thought about that. A man so afraid of being unloved that he'd decided to orchestrate the conditions for love. A man so desperate to be seen for his actual self that he'd taken 6 months to watch someone else. A man who decided, somewhere in the middle of his watching, that genuine love mattered more than perfect control. She asked about the second part of the journal, entry 120. She needed to understand when he'd changed, when he'd decided to stop controlling and start trusting. He told her about the realization that had come like a breaking open inside him. If he wanted her to choose him, he had to give her a real choice. And he couldn't give her a real choice if he was still controlling the variables. So he'd let her become unpredictable. He'd let go of knowing what she'd do. He'd terrified himself by falling in love with her without a safety net. Elena picked up the journal and turned to the final entry. She read it silently first, her eyes moving across his handwriting. She read about not knowing if she'd forgive him, about not knowing if the truth would break everything they'd built. She read about his certainty that the love between them was real, that every moment after he'd stopped watching had been genuinely hers to choose. When she finished, she closed the journal slowly and placed it between them on the couch. She asked him if he'd left it for her to find, not accusatory, just clarifying. She needed to know if this revelation was something he'd wanted or something he'd been forced to reveal. He confirmed it, He'd left it deliberately. He'd known she'd find it eventually. He'd wanted her to. She needed to understand the deeper truth. He hadn't just left it for her to find. He'd wanted her to know, needed her to. He nodded, and then he told her the truth that had been sitting beneath everything. Not because confession made him feel better, or because admitting guilt absolved him of anything, but because a marriage couldn't be built on missing information. Because he loved her too much to keep hiding, and because hiding was all he knew how to do. He'd been hiding from his money, hiding from his past, hiding from the world, but he couldn't hide from her anymore. Elena took his hand. It was warm and real and exactly as it had always been. She thought about the coffee shop, the Thursday walks, the way he remembered her tea. She thought about the careful architecture of their meeting and the genuine love that had grown from it. She thought about the man who'd been so lonely that he'd decided to study someone before he met them, and the man who'd become capable of letting her be unpredictable. There was something she needed him to do, not as punishment or as a price for forgiveness, but because she could see it in him, the exhaustion of controlling everything, everyone, all the time. The burden of it, the weight he'd been carrying since the moment he understood that money could buy almost anything except genuine love. She asked him to stop, not with reproach, but with gentleness. To stop trying to control things, not because he owed her anything, but because she thought he was tired. She thought he'd been tired for a very long time. Kareem's eyes filled with tears. He didn't look away, and he didn't try to hide them. Billionaire, crying in their small apartment because a woman had offered him something he didn't know he was allowed to want. The possibility of not having to control everything. He nodded and took her hand again, holding it like someone learning to hold something fragile and irreplaceable. They sat in the growing darkness of their apartment, and Elena realized something. The man who'd watched her had been watching not to judge her, but to understand her. The man who'd orchestrated their meeting had been searching not for control, but for connection. The man who'd hidden his wealth had been protecting not himself, but the possibility that someone could love him for simply being human. In the weeks that followed, Kareem stopped leaving the journal on the nightstand. He didn't need to. Elena knew the story now. She understood not just what he'd done, but why he'd done it. And understanding someone truly, completely understanding them, was the beginning of real love. He still made tea in the mornings. She still organized things by color. They still took Thursday walks, though now they walked together. The apartment still smelled like cardamom and old newspapers, but something had shifted. The performance had ended. What remained was simpler, to people who decided that love was worth the vulnerability of being known. How many times have we been told that love should be simple, that the best relationships are the ones without complications, without secrets, without the messy work of understanding someone else's fear? We've been taught that true love recognizes immediately, that soulmates exist without effort, that passion should be uncomplicated. But can love survive deception? Can you forgive someone for watching you if their watching eventually became seeing? You're really seeing you? Can you choose someone who engineered your meeting if the engineering was just his way of trying to earn the right to be loved? There's no right answer. Elena chose to stay, not because the watching didn't matter, but because the love that grew from it did. And sometimes, that's the only honest answer there is.